I need to turn that on, sorry. You should be okay now.
Yes, now all I've got to do is find the right screen to share, which I don't know. So I've got a new screen and I'm finding it very confusing. So I want to share a screen and I want it to be that one. Share. So there should be just a blank screen that says extra questions. Does that come out looking about right?
Yeah,
Good. We have liftoff. Okay. A few extra questions. We got through about 3/4 of them last time, so I thought I'd throw in one or two extra ones. So that didn't work. Yes, there we go. It would help. I'll try and put stuff up on the screen as well for these extra questions, but it would help if you've got any of the previous question sheets available. They all had the diagrams at the top. If you've actually got several of them, the ones with questions 12, 13, 14 and 15 on would be ideal, but it really doesn't matter too much. So these extra questions. Here we go. Extra question 1. That looks as though it's working okay. I want you to imagine, if you're looking at all those diagrams, which you'd get in the red book or the blue book or diagrams generally, that you've spilt something over most of the diagrams, so you can see a little bit. And the only bit that you've left, because it's pretty extensive spill, are those yellow numbers in the yellow circles at the top of each diagram. So what I'm talking about here, if you can see the mouse, this is a typical diagram. It doesn't matter which one it is. And there are often, and this is true of most books of diagrams, various bits to it. There are these numbers at the top, and we're going to pretend those are the only things that are left visible. Quite often there's something down the side to say what the changes are. You remember X means all pairs change. 3, 4 means that the bells in 3rd and 4th position stay put. There's the blue line. Quite often the treble blue line is shown in a different color, quite often red. And then there's the blue line for the 2 down here. And here, the 2, it's still the blue line showing what the 2 does, but by this time it's 3rd place bell and so on. Frequently, but not always, you actually have the numbers of every single bell underneath. Quite often, particularly with a larger number of bells, those numbers aren't shown. You just get the diagram, but sometimes the line is shown as well. So we're going to imagine that you've created a big spill and all this stuff here is invisible and it's just this bit here. Now the first question is a very important one. More of a social question than a ringing question. If it was me and I'd spilt something over it, would it be tea, coffee, red wine or whiskey? I'll give you a minute to think about that. Probably won't go around the room asking which. For me, it would very definitely be red wine. I think I'm very good at spilling that. Coffee would probably be my number 2 answer. I've got a list of answers here, and you'll be pleased to know they're all listed as correct answers for that. So let's get on to the serious stuff. I'm going to look at which of questions 12, 13, 14 and 15, and if you've got them in front of you, that would be great. We answered them last week. I'll put up sort of quick little summaries of what they were. Which could you still answer if the only bit of the diagram is visible are those yellow numbers at the top? So for each of, I'll actually suggest we do them in reverse order. Question 15, if you've got it in front of you, it effectively says which method are you ringing? If you're ringing the 2 and in a plain course, you become 6th place bell, then 3, then 2, then 5. Could you answer that just with the yellow numbers at the top? And then question 14, which effectively says you're ringing something and in a plain course at a first lead end 2, you become 3rd place bell. Which method could you be ringing? And likewise, question 13, which was a whole lot of questions about Norwich, one of which was at a lead end, at a plain lead end, the change is 1/6. A bell makes places in 1, that's the treble that's leading, and it's the bell at the back that makes places, and a few other questions. And question 12 said which of the methods we're looking at in the diagrams has a bell making seconds at a plain lead end. Now, can you just go through those? I'll give you a minute or two and think which of those could you answer just on these spill damaged diagrams with the yellow numbers at the top. can't see everybody, so perhaps when you think you've got an answer to all of those, maybe you could wave and Claire could let me know.
Oh, I can't see them all. Let me have a look, see if I
Oh,
can.
one wave. See that?
I can, yeah, I can see people now. So who's got an answer? So Elaine's waving.
Definitely 14 and 15.
Another wave.
Susan's waving.
14 and 15.
Yeah. Anybody else? Let's have a look. Margaret's waving.
I've got the same question, 14 and 15.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Hello. Sorry, I lost sound for a moment there. Yep.
Okay. So we've had three people have waved and answered, and they're all saying questions 14 and 15.
Okay. Oh, everybody's saying the same thing. That's probably a good sign. Yep, that's correct. So question 15 is purely about the order of place spells. So 2 becomes 6, becomes 3, becomes 2, becomes 5, becomes 2 again, and so on. And I don't think I've got the order there, right? 2 becomes 6, becomes 3, becomes 4, that becomes 5, I think it should have said. That looks more like Cambridge. But whatever it was, yes, you can certainly look at that just from those yellows number at the top to tell you the order of the place spells. And likewise, question 14 again is just about place spells. So just by knowing that after 2 at the top, you're going to finish up at third place spell, you can answer it just by looking at those numbers at the top. I don't care what the blue line is, 2 can go squiggling around all over the place. The point is, does it become third place or not? And just from the numbers at the top, you can get it. However, you're quite right, 13, you can't. It would have all sorts of questions about Norwich. And the fact that it's a 1-6 lead end, you can't tell from the numbers at the top. You can tell which place spell you can become, but you can't tell what exactly happens. You can't tell what the changes are. And the same is true of question 12. That involves actually what the blue line is. Do you make seconds at the plain lead end or not? And you actually need the blue diagrams to look at that. So that's quite correct. The remaining questions of these extra questions still emphasize this same thing. We are looking at, well, they're questions which are sensible questions in their own right, but we're also looking at how you get the correct answer. They're not multiple choice questions, so it's a verbal answer needed. So I want you to work out the correct answer, but also say, what information did you need? Could you do it, as we've just been discussing, just from those yellow numbers at the top? Or did you need the blue line as well, the blue and the red line for the treble and the bell number 2? Or did you also need those small black numbers underneath that, as I said at the beginning, some diagrams have all those numbers in, some don't, because it's just too much information. So how much information do you need? And there are 3 questions of this sort. And the first one is this, and I've put the diagram up there. In Norwich, I'm trying to make them sort of quite realistic questions. You might suddenly, someone says, grab hold for Norwich. Oh, there's 6. That does a whole lot of dodging at the beginning. Does it start with a double or a triple dodge? So I'll give you a minute, and perhaps you could wave again. But first of all, what's the answer to that? Is it a double or a triple dodge? And secondly, what information did you need? Could you do it just from those yellow numbers at the top? Did you need the blue line? Or did you also need the underlying small black numbers? Perhaps we could do the waving again, and Claire will let me know.
Yeah. So Mike Keeble's waving.
Oh, very quick
Mike.
answers.
You need to unmute Mike.
Just give people a little bit more time to answer.
Yeah. Okay, then.
Very odd on my screen. I can see a few people, but not everybody. So
Okay.
don't quite know why.
So Mike, are you ready to answer?
Yeah, I think it's a triple dodge, and the blue line is sufficient.
Yes. So it's this bit here. Well, there are 2 ways of doing it, because the blue line, this shows me what 6th place spell does. So if I'm merely interested in the positions that I'm ringing, I could look at this bit here, and we start at 6, and typically even bells go down to the front. So we're heading down to 5, but here we do the backward step called the dodge, and another dodge, and another dodge. So yes, it's a triple dodge. If you're looking at the numbers, you could have looked at the beginning here and seen how does 6 start, and you've got the same information. 6 starts by heading down, but it does 1, then another, then a third dodge. So yes, a triple dodge. And you're quite right, you couldn't have got it from this information at the top. That's not nearly enough, but you could have got it either from the blue line, and I think that's probably easier. Most people like looking at lines rather than all these detailed numbers, but you could have got it from the numbers as well. But if the numbers weren't there, certainly the blue line is needed. So the answer to that is yes, it's a triple dodge, and the best way to get it is from looking at the blue line. Good, next one, there are 3 of these.
I was going to say, we could qualify that slightly in saying that the numbers at the top do at least confirm the starting position for 6. So if you had the blue line that was just written as a blue line for the whole method, if you didn't know where 6 started, there'd be some work, quite a bit of working out to do of checking whether the treble was leading at the time, etc., etc. So they are handy, those numbers at the top. But it doesn't help you with the actual answer to the question.
Yeah.
Other than it helps you to know where to look.
It helps you locate the information. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, of course, if you're using your blue line diagrams on some sort of pad or phone or something like that, quite a lot of those allow you to say, well, here's the diagram. Which bell do you want to look at? And it would be as though I'd chosen, oh, please show me the blue line for the 2. And I could easily just change that quickly to say, no, I want the blue line for the 6. So that would have helped too. Okay, next question. Cambridge this time, and we've got the diagram for Cambridge. I'm ringing the 5, and I want to know what's going to happen, assuming it's a playing course at the first lead end. What play spell am I going to become?
2.
And again, same question. What's the answer? Which play spell will I become? And what information do I need? Just the numbers at the top, or the blue line, or the black numbers as well? You could give Claire a wave, and perhaps someone else could answer this.
Looking for somebody waving. I'll go up to Steve's waving. It's the first one I've seen, so I'll have to look at 2 columns of people. So Steve.
Yeah, the play spell numbers would be sufficient for that, because 5 becomes 2.
Yep. We know that the play spell order here, 2 becomes 6, becomes 3, becomes 5, becomes 4. Not very good at 4 for some reason. I don't like 4 today. Becomes 4, becomes 5, becomes 2. So I can get it from that. So if we had my red wine spill diagram, I'd still get it. But equally, of course, you could look at the blue line and just say, well, 2 does all these things here. I'm not really interested in what it does. I'm ringing the 5. So what it actually does is not relevant, but it does certainly finish up a seconds play spell. But if I'm not interested in the details of how it gets there, just 5 becomes 2. So the answer is 5 becomes 2. And how did I get that? I could have got it just from these numbers at the top. Next question, last question.
Oh, that's a hard question.
Oh!
Oh my gosh, that's hard.
Harder, I'll agree with, okay.
This was hard.
Pick the treble.
It doesn't go to the back.
But
It does.
Not in the first lead, no.
no, it does. It
Oh, I
does
see.
something. So this is
It does in the 4th
Oh.
column.
but it'll also go to the back elsewhere as well.
Hmm.
That's some interesting comments there. Yeah.
Second.
The first
So
thing
let's
is
let's look for some
Six.
waves. Is anybody waving yet?
2 waves,
3 waves.
one vigorous, one more restrained.
Oh yeah. So Christine, I'm so sorry. I'm having to scroll between screens. So
Is it the
Six.
6? It dodges a lot with the 6 at
Correct.
one point.
yeah.
Yes.
And you get that by looking at the numbers that are actually printed in the diagram. You can see that.
It's a very good answer. Anyone go a bit further?
So Elaine's waving.
It
Yes.
also does a triple. Is it a triple dodge with the second?
Yeah.
Yes. Very
which you can
good.
see from the blue line. Yeah.
Blue line.
Yep.
Yeah.
So let's just see what information we can get
Well,
from where.
that's fine.
The order of work, I think, is completely useless. Doesn't help at all.
No.
So first of all, if you haven't rung this method, well, why are we talking about a triple dodge? You may remember the first question said, does it start with a triple? Does somebody start with a triple? I can't remember who it was, a triple dodge. So there are some triple dodges somewhere. And just using the blue line, we can see where they come. Second place bell's pretty much at the front. Third place bell. Oh, fifth place bell. Yeah, here, fifth place bell does a triple dodge. And actually it does another triple dodge at the end of that lead end. So there's one there, and that's probably, oh no, look, it's doing it again. So also in sixth place work, you do a triple dodge and another triple dodge. So there are 4 lots of triple dodge. In fifth place work, you do it at the beginning and again at the end. And in sixth place work, you do it at the beginning and again at the end. But I've no idea who I'm doing it with. If I was the 2, it would tell me. Here, I'm triple dodging with a 3. But here, oh, it's the 3 again. So that's actually, it's a nice feature of Norwich. You have a sort of partner bell and you triple dodge with it, and then you wander off and it wanders off, and then at the end you meet it again. So that's a nice confirming thing. It's one of these things where eye contact helps. So you sort of wave goodbye, and then a bit later, hello, yes, good, we're back again for a triple dodge. And here it's a different bell. This time it's bell number 4 that the 2 is dodging with. And I wonder if the same thing will happen again. Here we are. Oh, we have a dodge with a treble, but that's only a single dodge. Here's a triple dodge, and yes, it's the 4 again. So here, again, rather like in fifth place work, you triple dodge with a bell, you wander away, it wanders away, and you meet up again. But that doesn't help me say which bell it is unless I'm the 2. For the 2, I triple dodge with a 3 at one stage, and later again with a 3. And then after the lead end, I do it with a 4 and again with a 4. But who does the 4 do it with? Now, pretty much the only thing I can do there is pick up where, by looking at the numbers, who is doing the triple dodging at the back. Here it's the 5 and 6, that's not interesting. 5 and 3, 3 and 2. Oh, 2 and 4. Here's one of the places that 4 is at the back. So it triple dodges with the 2. And presumably again with the 2. Yes, here we are, again with the 2. And somewhere else it's going to do a triple dodge. Here we are. Here's the 4 at the back again. No blue lines to help here at all. This time, a bit like happened with the 2, having done it with 1 bell, which for 4 is the 2 here. This time, 4 picks up the 6, and it does a triple dodge with the 6. And then probably later on at the end, yes, here we are. Here, yet again, it does a triple dodge with the 6. So the answer is the 2 bells are the 2 and the 6. Would anyone like to make a further comment about what's special about those bells from the point of view of the 4?
Everybody waving. Oh yeah, Margaret's waving.
It's the yellow numbers each side of the 4.
Good, well spotted.
Yep, that's extremely good, and I'm sure it's the same here as well. So with the 2, we decided it was the 4 and the 6. Oh. Was it?
No, it's
The
2.
4 and the 3. 4 and the 3. Which again, so yes, that's to test it for something else that is generally true. Good. A further comment, is anyone familiar with the concept of course bells?
I was going to wonder, bring that in. So we do discuss course bells quite a bit, and we start discussing them when we're doing sort of level 3, sort of at the plain hunting stage. That sort of comes into the syllabus as we're learning to plain hunt.
Okay.
And I think at that stage it actually it's sort of nice to see it, but or nice to know, but it's not always that useful from then for people, but it's a good thing to know about.
Okay, we'll come back if we've got some time at the end. We might come back and have a look at that concept again, but let's immediately go through and look at the remaining questions. I think last time we got up to 20.
Yes.
Okay. So the question we're looking at now will be 21. And all these remaining questions are really all trying to make the same point. So just in case, let's make sure we've all got the right question. Let me go back to screen share again and look at this one. So is that just question 21 there?
Yeah.
Yeah, looks like it.
You're ringing one of the methods and a bob is called. You were expecting, in the absence of call, to make seconds. Oh, so before going any further, we can eliminate one of the methods straight away. Which method can't it be? If we were sort of thinking merrily going along in a plain course, coming up to a lead end, I'm going to make seconds at this lead end coming up.
I don't think
What
you'd do that
method,
in
therefore,
Norwich.
we be ringing?
I don't think you'd be ringing Norwich if you're going to do that.
Couldn't be ringing Norwich? Let's go
Sorry,
up and
David,
have a look at
you
the-
wouldn't be ringing Norwich, would you?
Yes. Let's look at these diagrams again. So the question is, might you ring seconds? Plain Bob Minor, that you've no doubt rung, there is a time when you come in and you make seconds at a plain lead end. And indeed, that's a pretty common thing to happen. So in St. Clement's here, again, here we're coming down, we're doing some work, and at the lead end we make seconds. And indeed in Cambridge as well. Cambridge is a surprise method. It's got a much more complicated blue line. But again, at one point or other, we're coming down, we're doing all sorts of funny stuff. It's much more complicated, but at the lead end, we make seconds. But in Norwich, we don't. Norwich has a 1-6 lead end. That's one of the questions we answered last time, meaning that at the lead end, if it's a plain lead end, the bell at the front, 1, and it's always the treble, stays there, and the bell in 6th position also makes places. Therefore, these two swap and these two swap. So at a plain lead end, there isn't a bell making seconds. So the question here was, you're ringing one of the methods, and we were expecting, if there's no call, to make seconds. It could be Plain Bob, it could be St. Clement's, it could be Cambridge, but it couldn't be Norwich because you don't make seconds. So that's the answer to this one, Norwich. So you're ringing one of the methods and a bob is called. Quite irrespective of what I was expecting to do, what actually happens to my particular bell is that I run out. So I go from 2nd place to 3rd place, remembering that a bob was called. Which one or more of these methods could you be ringing? Let's have a think about that. Perhaps you can do the wave again.
I'm looking for waivers.
There's a difference between waving and wavering.
That's all right. No one's waving yet.
Can we see the diagrams again, please?
Yes.
Yeah, so we've stumped them. Oh, somebody had a wave. It's oh, Chris Duckett's applauding. Is that a wave, Chris?
It's a wave.
Okay.
You run out in all 4 of them. Norwich, you run out anyway. It's a plain lead, and you're not affected by the bob, but you just run out all the same.
So the question very carefully, I might even say sneakily, says, a bob is called. It doesn't say as a result you run out, it just says you do run out. Which methods would you run out in? So if we look at plain bob, you would be here. So you're coming up, you're expecting to make seconds, but a bob's called, and at a bob in Plain Bob Minor, you run out. So you do go from 2 to 3. It's not what's shown here because this is a plain lead end. A bell would make 4ths and the bell would run out. So you do go from 2 to 3 because of the bob. St. Clement's is very much the same. The lines are a bit different, but we're coming up here. We're about to finish. We're going to make seconds. So here we go. Lead, lead, a bob is called. So I run out again. It's a 1-4 at a bob, So a bell will make fourths, meaning these two will swap and these two will swap. So I'm affected by the bob and I run out, exactly the same as in plain bob minor. So yes, I could be going from 2 to 3 here. Looking at Cambridge minor, much more complicated line, but again, at one stage or other, I'm coming up to the stage where I'm going to make seconds. A bob is called, it's a 1/4 bob. Therefore, a bell makes fourths, these two swap and these two swap. These two swap, so yet again I run out because of the bob. So the answer to the first 3 methods is yes. If a bob's called, I might well run out from seconds place to thirds place because of the bob. I wouldn't have done so otherwise. If we look at Norwich, there isn't anywhere, this was the last question, there isn't anywhere where I make seconds. However, it might be that it would actually be the first lead end for the 2. I'd mess around doing whatever complicated stuff you do in Norwich. Here I come, I'm expecting to go from seconds place to thirds place, but there's a bob. What happens as a result of the bob? A bell makes fourths. So it would be the 3 there in that small little thing there would make the bob by staying in thirds place, in fourth place, and the bells on either side would swap. So these bells would swap, which they would have done anyway. So I still do go from 2 to 3, but as we were told quite correctly, the difference is I'd have gone from 2 to 3 anyway. But which methods might I run out from seconds place to third place at a bob? All of them. These 3, because of the bob, this one I would have done it anyway. And that brings us on to question 23, which is again, same question as before. You're ringing one of the methods and a bob is called. Your work at the lead end is to run out from seconds place to thirds place, as we just discussed. In which method, we've just answered this, are you unaffected by the call, meaning that you would have run out from 2 to 3, even if there hadn't been a bob?
Yeah, anybody waving? So Elaine's waving.
Porridge.
Yes. So in Norwich, there is a time when you run out from 2 to 3, but you would have done it anyway. So the crucial point here is with a bob, not all methods have fourth place bobs. We discussed that before, but all the methods in these diagrams do. If there's a bob, in each case, it's a fourth place bob. So if you're coming up and a bob is called, one thing you might do is make fourths. The bells in 2 and 3 swap, the bells in 5 and 6 swap. The difference is that in these other methods, the bells at the back dodge, which they would have done anyway. They're unaffected by the bob. You remember when we were looking at plain bob, we said that if you're above fourth place, you're unaffected by a bob. All these other 3 methods, that's true of. Here, it's different. Here, when you're at the back, it's a 1/6 plain lead end. Therefore, you would be coming up here, we're doing this triple dodge that we've been talking about, and you're expecting to make sixths. But a bob's called, as a result of which these places swap. This bell in fourth place will make the bob. These 2 swap, which they would have done anyway. It's these 2 that are affected. And it's worth noticing that exactly what happens here. We've talked about these triple dodges quite a bit. In Norwich, I happen to be 5th place bell. Here we are, we're going along. I do my triple dodge. Here, come out and I do 1, 2, 3 dodges, and then I'm going to make 6 if it's a plain lead end, but it isn't, there's a bob. So these bells swap. So I ring in 5th place, 6th place, 5th place, 6th place, 5th place, 6th place, 5th place. Here's the lead end, 6th place, 5th place because of the bob. And because I've picked up a 5th place bell, I've become 5, I do this work again. So I go 6th, 5th, 6th, 5th, 6th, 5th. So I've been doing a whole lot of dodging here. I dodge at the lead end, and my new work starts with dodges. Can anyone tell me how many dodges I make altogether in that whole sequence?
So
You have an answer?
Steve, Steve's got an answer.
Yep.
So shout it out, Steve.
7, 3, 1, 3.
Yes, that's a very good answer. Not 313, luckily, but it's 7. So you're coming up here, you're expecting to do a triple dodge, and you'll probably count the 3 dodges, but because of the bob, you go from 6 back to 5, which is yet another dodge. You're going yet another dodge here, and you're starting here, and you're doing 3 more dodges. So altogether, it's 7. Now, it's a well-known fact that most ringers can't count up to 3, let alone 7. We've actually got one ringer who's learning at the moment in Brisbane who can't count to 1, which is a bit extreme. But 7 is certainly too long to people. I mean, it's easy in real life. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, I can count up to 7. But of course, you're ringing, so it's dodge. Who am I dodging? Oh, it's you I'm dodging with. Yes, now, and now I've got to, hold my bell up or pull it in a bit, and here's the second dodge. And if you're counting at that speed, counting up to 7 without losing track really is quite difficult. So I very much approve of the answer that was given, which wasn't 7. The number of dodges is 3, which you'd have done anyway. And at the lead end, you do a dodge, and you start with 3 more. So you're very much counting 1, 2, 3 dodges. This is the lead end. Can I hear the treble ringing? Yes, there's the treble ringing, but the conductor called a bob, so I'm going to dodge back to 5th place. That's yet another dodge. How does my work start? 3 more dodges. So 3 plus 1 plus 3 is a very much better answer than 7.
How about days of the week? That's how I do
Yes.
it. That's how I
Really?
do it.
Wow.
I know I'll lose.
That sounds hard.
I know, because I know I will lose. I know I will lose count dodging, because I'm counting. If I'm counting whole dodges, I'm sort of counting too slowly to keep.
Oh,
keep-
that's interesting.
And
I've never
also,
heard
if
of
you're
that.
watching, I'm not very good with numbers, so if I'm watching for other things, I can easily be distracted from counting. So I can think, oh, was that 3 or was that 4? Or was that, was that 2 or was that 3? Often instinct is a good thing to rely on. But if you've got lots of dodges, counting days of the week is actually that's one of my techniques anyway.
Fair enough.
So if you get to Sunday, you've done enough.
You wouldn't want to say that to the vicar, though, would you? Oh, I'm dodging Sunday. Is that
Yeah, well,
right?
there you go. Just a little.
That's interesting. A lot of methods, there are other methods that have 5 dodges in them.
Yeah.
Lincolnshire is one of them. Often there, you notice the middle of the 7 dodges here is at the treble lead. A lot of those methods, if you're doing lots and lots of dodges, it will either be, as in this one, the middle one is as the treble's leading, or quite often this is called the half lead, where the treble's at the back. So there is a rather complicated method where the bell at the front here is doing 1, 2, 3rd dodge, and the 3rd dodge is when the treble's at the back, and then the 4th and the 5th one. So that's often quite helpful too. Okay, we've got a few questions about singles, and then we'll go back and have a little talk about coursing order. Firstly, I've deliberately restricted here the singles. We're talking about Plain Bob, St Clement's, and Cambridge only. The reason being, I've never actually run a single in Norwich. And an interesting point here is that when you say, the conductor says, we're ringing Norwich, everybody knows, or if they've forgotten, they can look up in the book what Norwich means. It means this blue line, lots of the treble dodges we've messed about with. But it is not an agreed part of the method what bobs and singles are. So if you're in any doubt, you need to check, oh, what sort of bob are we doing today? Now, in Plain Bob minor, a bob, I remember when we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, a bob, you make 4ths, and 2 and 3 run in and out. And at a single, a bell still makes 2nds, and you make 3rds, and you make 4ths. And that's pretty much agreed for all these methods. What do you think would happen at a single at Norwich? It's a genuine question. Has anyone ever rung one, and what happened? Or what do you think might happen?
I haven't rung one, but I think it would be 2nds, 3rds, and 4ths would be made. As in
Oh, hooray! We
a
disagree.
Wow. Well, it has to be, really, doesn't it?
I think it'd be 4, 5, and 6.
Well, it could be.
The answer is this is.
But in Bristol, I'm no expert, so I completely accept I could be wrong. I'm just trying to work this out. We haven't got anybody here. Well, I'm not sure. We haven't got sort of like your major authorities on ringing like Tony or Simon here, who would undoubtedly know this. But it would still be different because the bells at the back would still dodge would still cross because fourth is made. But the difference would be that that with the seconds and thirds would be made, that would obviously be altering the order slightly as well. We need somebody. We need somebody clever.
I know. I do actually know what the answer is because I talked to this Simon the other day, and this is the whole point. The argument for the 3 places being made in seconds, thirds, and fourths is that's what most fourth place methods do. So in all these other ones here, you make seconds at the lead end if there's a single, which you would have done in a plain lead end, and thirds and fourths.
Yeah.
And the argument therefore doing that in Norwich is, well, that's what normally happens in minor methods where there's a fourth place bob. So the conductor would say, oh, well, we're having some singles in this today, which neither of us have ever experienced. What happens at a single? Make seconds, thirds, and fourths. Fine. The argument for 4, 5, and 6 is that what happened at a single here, a bell makes fourths, certainly, and the bell that was unaffected, the bell that stays the other position that's made, is still made. So here, seconds is made, and fourths, so that leaves 3 stuck, so let's do 2, 3, and 4. Here, it's 6th place that is made normally, so the argument there would be, well, to be consistent, we're going to make fourths at a bob and at a single, but at a single, the position that would have been made, which is 6, is still going to be made. So it's 5 that's the bunny in the middle and has to stay put as well. So it's 4, 5, 6. I went for that. Claire went for 1, 2, 3, 4. Who's right? Now, this is the important point. Neither of us. What happens is whatever you agree in advance, many methods that are commonly run, like plain bob minor, you don't usually ask, oh, what happens at a single or what happens at a bob, because everybody agrees, and so everybody knows. Often, though, it's not the case. Norwich minor, if the conductor says, oh, sorry, by the way, I better just tell you we're going to have singles, Claire and I both say, oh, excuse me, what happens at a single? And we'd have to wait and see what the conductor says. It's up to him. And there's an important lesson there. Don't assume that what you do at a single or a bob is built into the method. It often varies. I think I might have mentioned last time, the method I'm learning at the moment in the shower in the morning, because that's what I do, is Cornwall. And I asked what happens at a bob. I think Claire answered that as well. And I asked Simon the same thing, and he said, oh, well, nearly always when you're ringing it just normally and you're doing a short toucher to practice, you do a 4th place bob, because that's what most people expect and is easier. But from a composer's point of view, if you're trying to make a quarter peal, quite often the conductor decides to have a 6th place bob. So same thing. Cornwall, we're going to ring a quarter peal, there'll be bobs in it. Excuse me, conductor, what happens at a bob? Is it 4th place or 6th place? And the answer is, it really is up to the conductor to decide and let you know.
There's also a point when with something like plain bob doubles, people will tell you that you can't ring singles in plain bob doubles, and if you wanted to work out a single in plain bob doubles in the traditional way, where bells make seconds, thirds, and fourths, if you think about it, the unaffected bell is making long fifths, so that touch would immediately be false, because you'd repeat a row, because you'd have seconds, thirds, fourths, and fifths being made, as well as the treble leading. So your next row would also be second, the same bells in the same places in the row. So, but you can ring a single in plain bob, and it's called, I think it's called an old single, and thirds is made, but in this. So thirds is made in the way that thirds is made in a normal single, and it's that place that sort of determines what happens, because the bells be above thirds, so the ones in 4th and 5th place swap over. So a bell that would have been making long fifths doesn't, and it runs in, and a bell that was going out the back, so the bells in 4, 5 cross. and seconds and thirds are made for a single but it's not often rung, and that's another one where if anybody said, well, we'll have singles in plain bob doubles, all your experienced ringers would be saying, how do I do that? And you know, which places are made. So yeah.
Yep, that's certainly true. Okay, let's finish up looking at these last questions about singles then. So I'm making the point here are some questions about singles, and we're talking about just these three methods. And because it needs saying, in all three methods, what happens at a single is that the change is 1, 2, 3, 4, meaning the bell leading, obviously the treble stays there, the bell in 2 stays there, the bell in 3 stays there, the bell in 4 stays there, which leaves 5 and 6 to swap. So which of these statements are true for a single in all three of these methods? Let's look at these one at a time. Firstly, at a single, a bell makes fourths, and this bell behaves in exactly the same way as it would at a bob. Either way, it picks up fourths place work. True or false?
Anybody waving? Nobody waving? Does anybody need to see the methods to work it out? Or? Nobody waving yet.
So, quite often, as we've just said, singles people find a little bit more confusing than bobs. I don't quite know why. I think it's because we normally think bobs occur much more often. But at a single, that's the other possible call. You remember there's a plain lead ends, and the conductor can alter this by calling a bob, which happens a lot, or a single, which is a little bit more unusual. You might well ask, what happens at a single? And you remember the change, that's the number at the left on those diagrams, tells you which bells stay put. So this means the bell in first position, not bell number 1 necessarily, but the bell that's leading, and the bell in second, and the bell in third position, and the bell in fourth position all stay where they are. So the change is those bells don't move, they make places. That leaves 5 and 6, or the bell in 5th and 6th position. They're not mentioned here. They don't stay put. They swap with each other. So what happens at a single is the bell in first, which is the treble, second's position, whoever it happens to be, third's position, fourth's position, they all stay where they are at the 2 blows of the lead end. So that's what happens at a single. So the first statement here is it true that at a single, a bell makes fourths?
So hands up who agrees and hands up who doesn't. So Mike Kubel agrees with that. Anybody? Yeah, we got a few more. So I'm switching between screens. So yeah, we seem to have got a majority of people agreeing with that, of the people who are making a decision.
Yep. A bell does make fourths because the change here, we've asked the conductor what happens at a single, and they've said it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, meaning all the bells in these positions stay put. That's what that change means. It's these numbers here down the side. They tell you which bells stay put. Does everybody change? Or in this one, the bell that's leading and at the back stay put. So if we're told it's a 1, 2, 3, 4 is the change, that means in particular, the bell in position number 4 stays where it is. So yes, a bell does make fourths. Now, if you remember what happens at a bob, in these methods, a bell also makes fourths at a bob. So it is true, yes, a bell makes fourths. It wouldn't do it at a plain lead end, but that is what happens if a bob's called. So whether it's a bob or a single, if you are in fourth position at the hand stroke of the lead end, you're going to stay there. You make fourths. And because it's made fourths, it picks up fourth place work because that's where it is. It finishes up in fourth position, so it carries on doing whatever fourth place bell does in that particular method, which could be different things according to the method. But at a single, just like a bob, a bell makes fourths. Next question, is it true, look at what the change is, that a bell makes seconds? at a single? We have a nod, that's a good sign. Several nods, yep. So a bell does make seconds, good. And is that what it would have done at a plain lead end in this method? So in Plain Bob and St Clements and Cambridge, does a bell make seconds at a plain lead end?
Yeah.
More nods, yes.
More nods.
Not in Norwich, but in those methods, yes, a bell makes seconds. So what we've got is 5 and 6 at the back are going to dodge as usual. A bell makes fourths, which it would have done at a bob, but not at a plain lead end. Also, a bell makes seconds, which it would have done at a plain lead end, but not at a bob. Either way, they're doing something they've done before. So if a single's called and you were coming up and you're going to be in fourth place, you stay there, but that's familiar because that's what you would have done at a bob. If you're going to make seconds, you still make seconds. So that's familiar as well, because that's what you do at a plain lead end. That leaves the bell in making thirds, and this is what people find tricky because they haven't done this before. So let's go on to D. A bell does make thirds as well. So the bell that makes thirds becomes thirds place bell, because it stays in thirds. That's where it is at the end of the lead end. And so in all three methods, it then hunts out to the back. You'd better go and check the blue line for that. Let's go and look at these blue lines. Is it true for all the methods that if you pick up thirds place work, you start by hunting out to the back? It's certainly not true of all methods. Is it true of these ones? Here, does thirds place bell hunt out to the back? What about Cambridge? Does thirds place bell hunt out to the back? Yes. And St Clements, where's thirds place? Here we are. Does thirds place bell hunt out to the back? Yes, it does. It wouldn't in Norwich, but in all these methods, a bell makes thirds, and its work happens in these three methods to be, having made thirds, you pick up thirds place work, and thirds place work hunts straight out to the back. So the answer to that is yes in each case. Where's the question gone? Lastly, part C, only two bells are affected by the call. The bell making thirds and the bell making fourths. So we've seen at a single, the treble stays at the front. Is that what it would do at an ordinary, a plain lead end? Yes, it always stays there. A bell makes seconds. Would it have done that at a plain lead end? Yes, it nods again, because at a plain lead end, that's what happens at a plain lead end, a bell makes seconds. However, making thirds is different and making fourths is different. So it is true that only two bells are affected by the call. The bell that makes thirds, which it wouldn't otherwise have done, the bell that makes fourths that it wouldn't have otherwise have done. 5 and 6 in all those methods are going to swap with each other, which is what they would have done. And a bell makes seconds, which is also what it would have done at a plain lead end. So in fact, two bells do something different, and it's these two. And by and large, that's quite often true of singles. Generally speaking, they affect third bells. They affect two of the bells. Last question. Oh no, this one. 25. You're ringing Cambridge, and as an exercise, the conductor calls a single at every single lead end. Now, one of the problems with surprise methods is there's an awful lot to learn, and it's very handy if, as people are learning it, you can say to your learner, you just learn what happens if you're sixth place bell or seconds place bell. So you ring one lead and you get through to the end, and then you have to stop because they don't know what to do next, which is a bit embarrassing. So as an exercise here, it's actually quite handy in Cambridge, and similar things happen in many other methods that is even more handy, that you're ringing Cambridge, and if you're on a particular bell, is it the 2, the 3, or the 4, the conductor calls a single, and you ring the same work all over again. And they call a single, and you ring the same work all over again. It may be boring, but it's a very useful exercise. So you can just, when you're starting to learn, you can just ring the one place bells work that you have learnt. So is it the 2, the 3, or the 4 that keeps repeating work at a single? Let's go and find the Cambridge.
We've got Mike Keeble has got the answer to the question. He's waving.
Okay, so what's the answer?
There's a need to unmute Mike.
I think it's the 2.
Okay, let's look at the 2. So you're really ringing away and you do all this stuff that, unless you know Cambridge, looks very obscure. You get to the back and a single's called. At a plain lead end, you were going to go from 5 to 6. If there's a single called, the bells
Still
in
go to
2,
5 to
3 and
6.
4 do stay where they are, but you'd still go to 6th position here. You'd still change at the back. So 2 will still become 6th place bell if there's a single. So it'll do something else next time, which means our learner's a bit stuffed because they haven't learnt that. Another answer? Claire, could you ask someone?
So who's waving? So Chris Stuckett is waving.
It's the 3rd.
Good.
Third, let's check this. So your
Well,
third
not-
place bell. And again, you do this stuff that, unless you know Cambridge, is very obscure. You whiz out to the back. You seem to spend quite a lot of time there. I'm really not interested in that. I'm interested in the fact that we're coming up to the lead end. I'm hunting down and I'm going to dodge from 3 to 4, but there's a single. What happens at a single? Well, I arrive in 3rd place. Because of the single, bells in 2, 3 and 4 positions stay there. So I do make 3rds. As a result of making 3rds, I'm starting the next lead in 3rds position. So I do, yes, it's the same again. I do the same thing. I come down, there's another single, I make 3rds. So I get stuck in 3rds place work the whole time.
Hmm.
So the answer there is, it's not true of any other bells, unfortunately, but in this particular method, if you ring the 3, you do indeed get stuck in the same place, which is a useful exercise if you've got a learner who's just learnt 3rds place work. I've put the last question in because, again, plain bob is what most people start ringing, and a lot of people do find they learn plain courses, they then learn what to do at a bob, and they do get a bit muddled up about singles and do find it a bit harder. And you remember when we discussed plain bob right at the beginning, the difficulty about a bob or a single or any call is, what do? You know what you're expecting to do. As a result of the single or the bob, you do something else. And then the tricky bit is, what am I going to do next lead end? So here's the thing we've already mentioned, that at a single, a bell stays in 4th place, but that's the same as a bob. They've done that already. They'd be happy with that. A bell makes 2nds. That's what you do at a plain lead end, so that's not too difficult. It's the bell that's making 3rds that's a bit weird. It's different. So this is what's happening here. We're ringing plain bob minor. We're expecting on the way down to dodge from 3 back up to 4, but there's a single, and we've realized that at a single, a bell makes 3rds. So you stay in 3rds place. You know what place bell you'll become, 3rds. So your next work will be which of these?
Got Margaret's answer. Got an answer?
You'll make seconds
Yes,
Hmm.
very good.
because it
So
pretends
what
that you've
happens-
just gone 3, 4 off.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. I always think of the you know, you're pretending to have done something. So.
Generally speaking, people at this level of ringing actually have to learn that, and it's an extra thing to learn, which is why I think it's a bit scary. What would be happening? You're this bell here, you're coming out, you're expecting on the way down to dodge from 3 out to 4, but there's a single. At a single, all these bells make a place, so you stay in 3rds place. And then we've got the problem we had in the very first session about, well, what am I going to do at the next lead end? One way of doing it that always works, this is why place bells are so important, is you say, I'm making 3rds. So I'll stay in 3rds place. So this is the work I'll pick up. What does this place bell do in this method? It goes out and makes 2nds. So one way of working out your next work is just saying, because I've made 3rds, I'm going to pick up 3rds place work. What does 3rds place bell do at the next lead end? It makes 2nds. Lots of other ways of remembering that, but
Yeah.
that's one of them.
I think that this is one of those things. So learning it in this way is one of those things where when you first start to learn what to do at bobs and singles in your first method, that's actually probably too much information, and your tutor might tell you that, but it's actually a bit too much information for you to take in.
Yes,
And so
exactly
the way
right.
most people learn it is they learn that at a bob, they run in, run out, or make it, and then they learn what to do next. So they're really only learning it in terms of either a circle of work or the blue line, and not the play spell thing. And that's not wrong, and that's how people get started. But the thing to realise about it is that the play spells are important, but if it's too much information immediately, it's something to go back to, and something that you can look back on and you look back and think, well, I know that really well now. Is there anything else that can help me? And then really getting the hang of the idea of play spells and where each spell starts. And looking at the method again, going back to the method, looking at it and say, well, okay, let's follow the line here. If this one makes a bob here, it's going to make fourths. Oh, I see, it's fourth play spell, and so it's going to jump from this bit of the line to that bit of the line. I see that, rather than thinking it's going to do, it's making fourths. If we're ringing play bob minor, it's making fourths, and we're going to do 5, 6 down next time. That's easy to learn. But then by looking at and studying the line, seeing how that you jump from one bit to another bit of the line, sort of like leapfrog over another bit to get to where you're going, and that helps you really learn the method well.
We're just about out of time. Can I do just a bit of research for a possible future thing? Can you put your hand up if you're, just so we can see the hands? Good. How many people have actually rung Plain Bob Minor? Leave your hand up if you have. How many people have rung St Clement's Minor? Good. How many people have rung Cambridge Minor? Less. What about Double Oxford? Good. Excellent. Thank you. The question I want to put is partly from a teaching point of view, and partly just from learning some interesting methods. What I had a meeting this morning, we're thinking about running a residential ringing course, and people were saying, what level shall we have it at? You know, do we want complete beginners? We do run one in Sydney each year, which is the Sydney Ringing School, surprisingly enough, and that's aimed at people who've got